The ATF is once again keeping the little people safe, this time by nabbing an 81-year-old and 75-year-old in rural Missouri on charges of dealing firearms without a license. By the indictments, they could face anywhere from 5 to 15 years in prison, and now the ATF is also trying to seize both of their legally owned collections. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. There is a lot to unpack in today's story about two separate senior citizens who the ATF are prosecuting for dealing firearms without a license, which could simply be a case of engaged in the business, owning an unregistered SBR, which could be as simple as owning a braced pistol, and even logging one of the man's collection as machine guns, though putting down the make, model, and caliber as unknown. Forgive me for not trusting the ATF's track record on what is and isn't actually a machine gun, thanks to Matt Hoover and Tate Adamiak. Now, if convicted, the 81-year-old would be getting out of prison at the ripe young age of 96. This is what the ATF is spending its time on. But before I get into all of the nauseating details, this video is brought to you with the help of Blackout Coffee Company. Blackout is a Florida-based coffee roaster that has strong roots in supporting Second Amendment rights and traditional values. They support channels like mine and have dedicated partner roasts that raise money for GOA, FPC, and even the Second Amendment Foundation. So, to get a cup of coffee, tea, or hot chocolate that you can be proud of and help out the channel, go to blackoutcoffee.com/libertydoll, and as a bonus, you can use code LibertyDoll for a one-time 20% discount. The two men were both indicted by a grand jury, and the press release from the ATF doesn't give us a ton of details, but given the agency's history, I am skeptical at best. Two Missouri individuals charged with dealing firearms without a license and other offense. According to an indictment returned this week, Aubrey Foxworthy, 81, of California, Missouri, was charged with dealing firearms in Morgan and Manitou counties from approximately June 2, 2023 through September 9, 2024. He did not have a federal firearms license to deal firearms. Foxworthy was also charged with possession of a rifle with a barrel length less than 16 inches, and that rifle was not registered to him in the NFA and transfer record. According to an indictment returned this week, Philip Leroy Raines, 75, of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, was charged with dealing firearms in Morgan County from approximately April 1, 2023 through April 4, 2024. He did not have a federal firearms license to deal firearms. Foxworthy faces 15 years in prison for both charges and a fine over $250,000. Plus, if he is convicted, another 3 years of supervised release after the fact. Raines faces 5 years and a similar fine. The ATF says that this is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, bringing together all levels of law enforcement and the communities they serve to reduce violent crime. One of the ways the ATF allegedly does this is through fostering trust and legitimacy in our communities and setting focused and strategic enforcement priorities. Ah, yes, because the ATF is so great at being trustworthy, and these two senior citizens are definitely a priority in the war against violent crime. Now, the press release doesn't give any further details, but what I suspect is that we genuinely have a case of a couple of older gentlemen downsizing their collections and being found engaged in the business. And how many times have you gone to a gun show and seen some old dudes at a table offloading a few things? It's pretty common. Both men were not bothered with until during the Biden administration, and while the Engage in the Business final rule didn't come out until 2024, it was part of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was passed in 2022. And according to the DOJ, there was a 60% increase in the number of defendants prosecuted under the tighter Engage in the Business definition. I mean, I seriously doubt that these two men just randomly decided to up and violate the law on purpose and start gun running at the age of 74 and 80. From Foxworthy's indictment, I'm even more inclined to believe the offloading parts of a collection theory, as the indictment not only charges him with being engaged in the business, but also demands he forfeit his extensive collection of 197 firearms. A lot of them are .22s, several are deemed unknown makes, models, and calibers of machine guns, and there's even lever-action rifles from 1894 and 1895. So again, we're talking a lot of .22 rifles and revolvers. They also want his 16,000 rounds of ammo. Now, based on this collection, something tells me this guy wasn't offloading full auto Glocks to gangbangers and drug runners. Being it's rural Missouri, that makes me question the ATF's motivations and charges even more. Maybe there is MS-13 in rural Missouri, but I feel like this guy was not their supplier. Of course, I could be totally off base. This is just speculation on my part, and we won't know for sure until the trial gets started or either man takes a plea. So far, all that's up online for court documents are the actual indictments and nothing else. Literally no other information. Either way, I don't think that two men aged 75 and 81 are worth the ATF's time or taxpayer money to hold them in prison. And seeing as how many men the ATF like to roll up with in these situations, I can't even imagine this like 81-year-old guy sitting at home in his rocking chair with a blanket over his lap or something, and like 50 ATF guys just roll in their little tanks. I mean, you know, it was recently the anniversary of Waco, so the ATF's motto seems to be go big or go home. Or, you know, burn the whole place down. At least these two men are still alive to face trial. They could have been Malinowski'd. All right, gang, that is it for this video. Believe me, I am going to be watching these cases because this is absolutely ridiculous, and I'm really curious how the ATF landed on arresting these two guys. Until then, you guys know the drill. For all of the algorithm things, please do them, and as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and happy shooting.